This is Laith Marouf from Free Palestine TV, and I'm with two guests visiting us here in Lebanon for the funeral of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. We have David Miller, professor from the UK, and Dimitri Lascaris, lawyer from Canada. We are in Kafarkila, right on the border of Palestine. This is the first international journalist groups to enter Kafarkila since it was liberated and the Israelis left a few days ago. Behind us is the water reserve for the village that was destroyed by the Israelis. There's another part of it there, and there's a huge hole from a missile that hit right there. And also, right behind us there is the UNIFIL base for the Indonesian group that also got targeted by the Israelis. So we're going to be standing on the side of the hill looking down on Kafarkila so we can see all the damage. Just watch your feet and watch your head, guys. Obviously, all these homes are not military targets, and they were destroyed on purpose. Oh, my Lord.
So I think what really strikes me about this horrifying devastation that we see before us is that right on the other side of the wall is the Israeli military base in Metula and the settlement by the same name. And according to the Israelis, Metula suffered, if not the worst, devastation of any settlement in northern Palestine, one of the worst. And you can see even from here that the level of devastation there is not even remotely comparable to what we see in the valley below. I mean, almost everything in the valley below has either been leveled to the ground or demolished to the point where it's uninhabitable. But most of the buildings over there look like they're intact. So there's really, you can tell there's indiscriminate bombing of Kfarkila.
And most of these homes were actually destroyed after the ceasefire came into effect, and the Israelis entered then most of Kafarkila and destroyed it house by house. And by the way, I detest the term settlement because the word settlement entails an empty land that you come and settle. These are colonies, which means they are coming and stealing people's land to colonize. So, David, this is your first time in South Lebanon. Dimitri has visited a couple of times during the war. What's your impression about this?
Well, you can see immediately the distinction between this side of the wall, which is Lebanon, and that side of the wall, which is occupied Palestine. As Dimitri said, I mean, the pattern is absolutely clear that the settlement over there has not been destroyed anything like the way this has been destroyed. You can just see barely a building with no damage. I mean, almost everything destroyed. And of course, this is a war on the population of Lebanon, not on supposed fighters from Hezbollah. And this is what they do, isn't it? This is what the reality of Zionism is. That Zionism wants to destroy and kill the people of Palestine, and indeed the people of Lebanon and Syria. And it wants to expand itself, and it tried to expand here. And the people of Lebanon fought back heroically, and now just 2 or 3 days ago, the Zionists have withdrawn to that military base there. No doubt they are watching us from the tower as we speak. But we're in a period where they have withdrawn, and this is the day before Hassan Nasrallah's funeral, and it looks unlikely there will be any incidents in the coming hours. But this is a scene of devastation, and it's just an indication, really, of what we knew in the abstract, I suppose. But this is what Zionism is. It's destruction.
That's the apartheid wall, and you can see some of the famous graffiti that was on it. And you can see a section that they obviously opened up to enter Kafarkila and invade from it.
There appears to be another section they've opened up down there.
Yes.
See that? Can we see the Sheba Farms from here?
Sheba Farms?
Yes.
No, Sheba Farms are all the way at the corner with the Golan Heights.
And where's the Golan Heights from here?
I mean, parts of the Golan Heights, you can see there.
Yes, in the distance.
In the distance.
Right.
And the mountain peak is behind the clouds.
Right. And this is the northernmost colony in occupied Palestine, correct? Methulah?
Yes. And behind it is the Hula Valley. You see the low point there is the Hula Valley.
You can see why they would want to occupy this area here because it's so high, and you can see for so far. And on the other side of the hill, you can see over quite a lot of Lebanon. And no doubt they really didn't want to pull back from this. And it's only in the last 3 days that they have pulled back after some extended period of time, which other Lebanese villages were liberated by the villagers themselves.
We can hear some of the heavy machinery right now trying to remove some of the rubble and open the roads in the village. But most of these roads were totally blocked even 2 days ago.
I understand the population, the pre-war population of Kfarkila was about 6,000. We've only seen a smattering of people back here, which is not surprising. It's essentially uninhabitable right now.
Yeah, you can hear the heavy machinery. You can see some cars moving. I just heard a child's voice from the valley. Amazing the sound carries up. You can hear children's voices. Just a few children and other people have returned. I've seen other parts, other villages in the last day or so. And again, sometimes very few people have returned to the very worst damaged places where 97-98% of the buildings have been damaged. But on the way here, we saw other villages where there's proportionally less damage and where people have returned, and there's a lot of work already going on in reconstruction and clearing rubble, etc.
As we see, practically every house has been either totally destroyed or damaged. The closer they are to the border, the more intentionally leveled to the ground they are.
There, that looks like some kind of a warehouse. It's been completely flattened. That circular building, do you have any idea what that was?
It seems like a villa, and that's the balcony of the villa. That's the soccer field for the village.
If I'm not mistaken,
fence.
they've carved a Star of David in that field.
Oh yes, they carved the Star of David with their tank tracks.
Oh, is that the one that we saw the film of that some weeks ago from the satellites?
Oh, that's in Gaza actually, in northern Gaza.
Right, so you've done the same thing here.
Yeah. So the Star of David right now is a symbol of hate.
Yeah.
It's very similar basically to the swastika. Wherever you see how they did to the Palestinian prisoners, also putting them in Stars of David. So any Jewish person that actually cares for Judaism should be the ones that are fighting the Israelis over these things. But unfortunately, up until now, there's not enough courage within the Jewish anti-Zionists to confront Zionism with anything more than words or non-violent
Well, I think
demonstrations.
this is a problem of the anti-Zionist Jewish left, yes, but it's also a problem of the wider pro-Palestinian movement that we have not understood in the West, in the UK, in the US, France and Germany, that the only way to end the suffering of the Palestinians, to liberate Palestine, is to end Zionism materially. That doesn't mean marching in the streets and demanding that the UK or the US or the German government stops arming Israel. It means materially dismantling the Zionist movement wherever it is in the world. And of course, in this part of the world, it is materially dismantling everyone around it. But people have to understand that the Zionist movement is not just here. It's not just in Palestine. It's also in the UK. It destroys the politics of the UK. It pushes hatred against Muslims. And it has a huge orchestrated infrastructure in the UK, in the US, in France, in Germany, and many other countries which it uses to advance its aims. And people in the UK need to understand that that needs to be dismantled as well. There are something like 3,000 Zionist organisations in the UK. Nobody has taken any steps or more than minimal steps to dismantle particular Zionist organisations. Thousands and thousands of them, but they need to be each one of them dismantled because each one of them is intrinsically, as we know, irreducibly racist and continues every day of their existence to continue to support materially and financially what's happening and what we see before us here. People need to learn the lesson. Zionism has to be confronted wherever people are in the world and has to be materially dismantled.
As a lawyer, I ask myself what that could mean. At a bare minimum, I would think, David, it would mean legal prohibition. So, for example, organizations like AIPAC, the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs in Canada, they should simply be abolished legally. These are proponents of genocide and whitewashers of the worst crimes against humanity of our time.
I mean, I think in Canada is a good example where the JNF, the Jewish National Fund, which is the land theft agency of the Zionist entity, has had action taken against it by the courts. Now that needs to be replicated everywhere. But it's not just your AIPACs and your CJAs and your well-known Israel lobby groups that need to be stopped. It needs to be the whole range of Zionist organizations. Now, that's easy technically in many cases. But there are some Jewish organizations which are Zionist, which it would be difficult to remove because they perform a genuine communal function. You can't close all Jewish schools. You can't close all synagogues, almost all of which are Zionist. What you can do is you can have them resign from the Zionist movement. Easy thing for them to do. Most of them are formally signed up to the Zionist movement, to the World Zionist Organization, who see this as being defensive, as opposed to the aggressive genocide it is. And those organizations should be encouraged to resign from the Zionist movement. If they won't do that, then steps must be taken to remove their leadership and make sure that Jewish kids have non-racist schooling like everybody else is required to do.
And they must be barred from contributing materially to the Zionist entity.
Of course.
I think the only group that I can fully condone in the West right now is Palestine Action, that are taking direct action to dismantle the war machine that's supporting these war crimes. And it's really shocking that there's, I think, very little Jewish members in the Palestine Action group. If I don't know if I personally can't name any, but I would presume there's at least one or two Jewish people in this organization. But what's more shocking is that it hasn't been copied, the methods and or the name or the group across Western societies that are all involved in this. And I don't know, why do you think, David, this hasn't been copied in other countries in such direct ways?
Well, I mean, Palestine Action does show some signs of internationalising, and it's been active in a number of countries, including Germany, Australia, not so successful in Australia, but it is certainly the cutting edge of the anti-Zionist movement. What Palestine Action does and has done in the UK is that they enter Israeli arms factories. In particular, they've targeted Elbit, the largest arms firm in Israel, and they go into their factories and they smash them up. They dump them in red paint, they disable them, they steal materials from them to destroy them, and they also, of course, gain intelligence on their suppliers, and then they contact those suppliers themselves, and that's a kind of ripple effect, which means that they have shut down several arms factories, not to be used again for the purpose, and several of the suppliers have had to withdraw. So that is a model for what we could be doing with the other Zionist organizations, the 3,000 Zionist organizations that I mentioned in the UK, and of course there are many more than that in the US and in other countries. These are organizations which have charitable status or are registered as companies, and of course they have directors, they have trustees, they have lawyers, they have financial advisors, they have accountants. All these are institutions with addresses, with people working for them who can be identified, and that can be a mechanism for directly targeting these organizations with legal cases, taking on the regulators, etc. And that's a way of us saying that we're not just going to contribute to the liberation of Palestine by marching in the streets of London, but we're also going to do it by disabling the ability of the Zionist entity here to continue with its genocide.
In terms of legal action, Dimitri, I mean, you're a lawyer. You've dealt with cases on this issue. I mean, I personally have no trust in the legal systems of the West that are colonial and racist and Zionist for the most part. But is it worth it pursuing these legal cases, even as a form of harassment against the whole system, and to entangle the Zionists as they do with the anti-Zionists, how they take everybody that's anti-Zionist to court, entangle them also into expenses? Is this worth the effort?
Well, based on my own experience, and I think probably in Canada, I've been involved in as much Palestinian solidarity litigation as any lawyer in the community. Not too many of us are doing this kind of work in Canada, sadly. My experience has been relatively positive. The results that we've obtained from the Canadian judicial system have, on the whole, vindicated the rights of Palestinians. And currently, there are 3 cases before the courts relating to the genocide, one of which I'm prosecuting with 6 other lawyers. And we are taking the position that Canada is violating Article 1 of the Genocide Convention, which requires Canada to prevent genocide. There was a second case that was filed just days ago on behalf of 11 Palestinian Canadian families who are trying to extract family members from Gaza. And there was a case filed some months ago by the International Human Rights Group at the University of Toronto Faculty of Law, alleging that Canada is violating the Genocide Convention by trading in arms with Israel. So these are going to all be, in their own way, pivotal cases. The courts of Canada have not yet been put in a position where they were required, even on a preliminary basis, to assess whether Israel might be committing genocide. So although we've had favorable results in prior cases, the ask that we were putting to the court was not that ambitious. So this is going to be a real test for all 3 of these cases, for how far the judiciary is willing to go. We have to bear in mind that the judges in Canada, like many Western countries, are appointed by the political leadership. And in my experience, that tends to mean that they are more or less politically aligned, the judges, with the political leadership. So I don't assume these are going to result in judgments that are consistent with the demands of justice, these 3 cases. But based on my prior experience, as I say, I'm hopeful. We'll have to see. And one thing I want to say, to echo what David was sharing with us moments ago, I think the experience of the last 16 months of horror has shown beyond a shadow of a doubt that Western political elites could not care less about polite protest. They literally could not. I don't recall a time in my life where an issue generated so much protest in Canada as has the genocide over the past 15 months. And yet Canadian government policy has not changed materially in one single respect. And I can't see that it has in any major Western country, not in Britain, not in France, not in Germany, certainly not in the United States. So we have to raise our game, the Palestinian solidarity movement, in all communities, the Jewish community, but in all communities, and especially if it's being done in our name.
Look at this, guys.
That looks like something you would use to blow something up.
Yeah, it's the trigger for after they put all the explosives in the houses. In the neighborhood.
So this pin, you would pull it out to
Yep.
bring about the ignition?
Yep, go on. They will give the electric shock that will explode the C4.
Wow.
And
This reminds me of that report about the Israeli journalist who came on the Lebanese side and blew up a building gleefully. Remember that?
oh yes, he used exactly the same kind of trigger.
ולמירון, מפה יורים. מהמקום הזה? מקום, אתה אומר שעכשיו, אתה תרים עכשיו, תלחץ על זה, ויותר לא יראו משם. 4, 3, 2, 1, סוף.
Wow.
I see on the back it says CAP blasting non-electric 1,000 feet mini tube inline initiator. And it has a lot number which we can probably trace and find out which arms firm supplied this. It's in English. It's not in Hebrew. It's in English. So we can tell this has come from a Western country, probably from the US, an indication that Israel is enabled every step of the way by the US government and by other Western governments.
Amazing. I would say there must be a good 30, 40 meters of wire here, maybe even more.
1,000 feet, it says.
1,000 feet.
Yep.
Yeah. And they obviously
Wow.
used half of it to explode this neighborhood.
And they didn't just explode the houses, did they? There's a crater from a missile there. That's been hit by a missile.
And the house behind us here, they set it on fire.
And over there, they knocked them down with bulldozers. So they had a comprehensive way of destroying houses.
You
The
think-
car was even forced open. You can see the boot of that car was forced open.
You'd think they have a good sense to take the American evidence of their crimes with them, but they just leave it that these people are completely heedless
So
of.
we're the first people to come here, and no one else has come here.
Yeah, I mean, look,
That's true.
they've committed a televised genocide for 16 months, and they got away with it. So why would they care?
Why would they care?
Why would they care?
Very true.
Oh yeah, let's continue this tour. Let's see what we can see in the village.
So as we were driving down from the hilltop, I saw a lot of damaged olive trees, and of course the villager up top was telling us, complaining about the extensive destruction. I mean,
Yeah.
look at this, just wanton destruction of olive groves.
You know what he said, the old man? Obviously, he said that he owns a lot of dunams here. Look at some of the olives on the floor here. But he said the Israelis were coming in, picking the older trees that are over 100 years, 150, the ones that his grandfather had planted, and they would uproot them. Don't go inside too much because they could be unexploded organisms.
Look at this.
They would uproot the older olives that are 150 years and tie them in nylon and then put them on the back of trucks and steal them, take them into occupied Palestine. And anything that they feel is too young, just to make sure that the locals don't use and have livelihood from, they would destroy like this.
You can see there are still a few trees there, over there, but the rest of them have all been destroyed. I mean, it's a calculated genocide, isn't it? That's the purpose of this, is to destroy the livelihood and the sense of being of the people.
To render this area uninhabitable.
So this is the guy who owns the place.
He says that these olives are for him, and that's his home too. 3 floors home. فجروه بعد وقف إطلاق النار ولا قبل؟ A month ago they blew it up.
They blew it up.
This was his home?
Yeah.
كله هذا كله أباعوا بيها.
في شغلات كانت معمرة يعني 150 100 سنة سرقوها، في شيء سرقوه؟
كله هذا مقبع، هذا عمره فوق ال 100 سنة.
وفي شغلات سرقوها أخذوها معهم. So here there's a few that they took that are over 150 years old. This is why it's cleared now here, because they took everything that's old. الله يقويكم، الله يحميكم، والله يعوضكم.
الحمد لله
يا رب.
الحمد لله.
إمتى رجعتوا؟
هلا جينا نحن اليوم.
They just came back today to the house. جيتوا كلكم العيلة؟
أنا وعائلتي وأولادي جينا نتفقد نشوف.
The whole family, the kids and everybody to check their homes, they're back.
هالأرض اللي ورا البيت كلها لقينا، كله مقطوع.
يا رب يا الله. وكنتوا طلعوا منه زيت زيتون
طبعا هذا بنطلع منه مونة عمر الزيتوني فوق ال 100 سنة.
يا رب. A lot of these olive trees were over 100 years old, and they would make olive oil and sell it, obviously, and also make enough for their family consumption.
You know that this area won the first prize internationally in the quality of olive oil.
I'm just speechless. I mean, honestly, the level of devastation is mind-blowing. I thought I had seen the worst, but this is far beyond anything I've seen in my trips to Lebanon.
And they're starting now to do this in the West Bank also, in terms of this level of destruction.
The clear goal is to render it uninhabitable, so that people do not return to this area. It seems to me.
رايحين على التشييع بكره؟
طبعا نحن جينا اليوم عشان هلا بعد شوي نازلين عشان على بكره بنروح على التشييع.
He's saying that they came today to check on their houses and their land, but they're going tonight. They're going to drive back to Beirut to be there for the funeral procession of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and Sayyid Safiuddin.
نحن من أساس الضيعة المملكة ضيعة عنا رزق وعنا بيوت.
They are indigenous to this village. They've lived here generations over generations, and they're one of the main families in the town.
Have they had to rebuild before? Has their home been damaged or destroyed before?
حرب 2006 دمروا لكم؟
لا ما كان في شيء. هي أول مرة بيصير عندنا هون بالضيعة.
باحتلال
حتى بالاحتلال ما كان في شيء.
This is the first time, in none of the other wars, including the time of occupation, did they destroy Kafarkila. This is the first time they do this.
Will he?
هذا المركز ويش بيتنا. مركز ويش بيتنا.
Does he intend to rebuild?
وحترجعوا تبنوا؟
طبعا.
يا رب يا رب.
شو بدنا نعمل؟ الحمد لله.
الحمد لله.
كله بيرجع بيتعمر.
He said yes.
Yes, they're going to rebuild.
نحن هيدا بتتعمروا بسنة بسنتين. بس الزيتون اللي عمرها 100 سنة و150 سنة هيدا قديش بدها لترجع؟
They can rebuild in a year or two, but those olive trees that are 100 and 150 years old, how can you replace that?
كانت هذه الزيتون نعيش من وراها زيتون وزيت. الله سبحانه وتعالى معطينا الرزق.
They used to
رزق
live
أهلنا
off
ورزق جدودنا. جدودنا يعني احنا رايين لجدودنا.
3-4 generations lived off olives that come off these trees. And as Hadi behind the camera pointed out, this is some of the best olive oil in the world. They won the first prize in the international competition for olive oil in the world.
يعني هذه الضيعة هون عندنا معروفة بالزيتون وبالزيت كل الضيعة. ويعني الزيتون كل العالم تعيش منه كانت زيت وزيتون وخير الله ورزق جدودنا. يعني أنا واعي من 60 سنة، عمري هلا 60 سنة 62 سنة، من 50 سنة أنا كنت أجي أفلح مع جدي الأرض.
So this village is very famous for its olives and olive oil, and it's, you know, since he was a little child, he's now 60 years old. So this was the second season in a row that they couldn't pick the olives, and that's why there's so much olives on the ground.
هذه جيراننا ليك، هذه جيراننا البيت للطوابق. طابقين نزلوا بالأرض تحت وبعد في طابقين فوق.
وفي شهداء فيه؟
لا ما كان فيها.
This their neighbors. The explosion brought down the whole building, so there's actually a crushed whole floor under.
الطابق الثاني صار تحت بالأرض، راح المدخل يبدو كلنا تحت بالأرض.
See, that entrance is supposed to be right here, but it's now underground entrance.
It's all destroyed basically, but it's still standing.
Yeah.
That was our tour in Kafarkila. You can see here Rami Yahya, who unfortunately was not speaking much today, but you can obviously find him on Dimitri Lascaris' Reason to Resist channel, and you can continue following Dr. Miller on his Twitter and on
tracking_power on Twitter and on Telegram and on Instagram.
Go to our website, freepalestine.video, donate, and subscribe to monthly donation. Share it with all the people that you know. Follow us on all our social media. Until we meet you next time, we bid you all a free Palestine.